Happy March 5th. You'll notice I have white stuff on my face. Ha ha ha, laugh it up. But I'm Italian and I have these brown spots for some reason because I spend a decent amount of time outside these days, and I'm getting what seems to be some kind of a skin issue. I will not say the C word because I do not have cancer or anything, as far as I know. So, hopefully we got that whole rest of the show on there. Actually, what I'm going to do is maybe rewind it even a little more, just in case I have to cut off some on the other end of the last one. I'm just going to rewind like a minute or so.
And that is that the blessings are going to be removed.
All right.
And
this way I can cut off
in various forms.
All right, love you, let's go.
It can come, first of all, in economic collapse. Something I would say is absolute, that if we do not turn back our headship of nations, that's the thing in the Bible, that we're going to lose that very, very shortly if we keep on going. And it can, the calamity can come in the form of natural disaster, man-made disaster, certainly decline, certainly fall. Certainly, one of these omens, actually, I mentioned with the Shemitah, the Hebrew word, there's a mystery in that, means really to let collapse. And so it means, the ultimate thing is we're hearing more and more about the end of the American age, and that is what it foreshadows. And I'll mention one thing here, and this will go to that. This is the king. In the Harbinger, it's the King Solomon mystery, or the mystery ground. And the mystery here is that when Israel was basically complete as a nation, they had a temple and everything. They had this special dedication gathering. King Solomon called the nation together, and they prayed and they dedicated the nation to God. And they dedicated the future to God. And so they did this whole thing, and they did it on the Temple Mount. And years later, and actually even before that, Solomon prophesied what was going to happen. The people turned away. Finally, the last thing happened, that the judgment comes to this is the southern kingdom, comes to them, and it ultimately returns to the Temple Mount, and that's where they dedicated the land. So the principle is that with a nation like this, that when the calamity comes, it returns to the nation's ground of dedication or consecration. And it was a sign that, hey, the covenant has been broken, and I'm calling you back, people. I'm calling you back. So what does this have to do with America? Is there a day or something that kind of matches up with that? Well, amazingly, there is. In the very first day of America as a nation, I mean, the very first day when it had a government, it had a president over the government, it wasn't 1776, it was 1789, it was April 30th, and it was the inaugural of George Washington. And the day follows the same pattern. America's complete. It's a day of prayer and dedication, and Washington speaks. Really, he actually gives a prophetic warning on the very first day of America's existence. And what he says, can't get into the detail, but it's in the book. But the thing is that what he says, in effect, is if America ever turns away from the ways of God, the ways of heaven, the blessings are going to be withdrawn from the land. And Washington would speak about the protection on America and the prosperity on America. And then he takes the government, the first government, and he leads them on foot to a place to pray and dedicate the future of America, to God and the generations to God. And they do that, and they do this in a little stone chapel. So if we can find out where this is, that's going to be the mystery ground, and that's going to reveal something really pretty awesome. And that is where did it take place? Well, the first capital of America wasn't Washington, D.C. It wasn't even Philadelphia. The first capital of America was New York City. And specifically, it was Lower Manhattan. And specifically, where did they go to pray? Where did they do this? They went, the ground of consecration of America is none other, it is ground zero.
No way. Is it really?
Yes, they went.
There was an old church
corner of ground zero right there, and you can even still see that place to this day. Right at the corner of ground zero, it's mystery ground. In fact, ground zero itself, it wasn't just at the corner. The ground zero was part of that church land. It actually is ground zero, and the ancient principle of the calamity returning to the nation's ground of consecration. And it's on that ground where the harbingers, where the sycamore grew that we just spoke about, that it grew on America's consecration ground. It was struck down on America's consecration ground. Where that act of replacing it with the other tree happened, same thing, all on that ground. And on 9/11, a shockwave comes forth from ground zero, is a place where America was consecrated, and it goes and it strikes another place. And what it strikes is it strikes Federal Hall, the place where Washington was sworn in and the government began. It's the place where Washington gave that prophetic warning that these things are going to be withdrawn. And, you know, the other thing is that if you went around Ground Zero, you'd see that every building was either destroyed or just so badly charred, except for one. The only place that was protected was that little stone chapel where they prayed, where they dedicated the consecration ground to God that day, on the first day. And the reason why they said it was protected is because there was something that stopped the force of 9/11, and it was an object, and what that object was the sycamore, was the sixth harbinger that saved the place. And so the real message is that the harbingers and the point and the message of the harbinger. And I pray, Lord, you know, this is your word, this is for now. That it is not for destruction, it is to save and and that we don't have to do this. But the big question is if it's in our court, and so that is where it stands.
So as you see all this, Jonathan, can anything be changed? Are these things like the movie Christmas Carol, harbingers of things that will be or should be or can be?
Yeah, well, they shouldn't be. These are things. Yeah, that's actually a good analogy.
But he doesn't even listen.
These are things which are absolutely heading this direction. Does it have to be? No. In fact, I mean, even with ancient Israel, it didn't have to be. You know, if the people turned. But if you remember, Georgia, with 9/11, you know, there was this big, you know, move. It was such a spiritual thing happening that people were rushing to houses of worship and all, and it lasted about 3 weeks. You know, and after that, there was, you know, nothing. In fact, we've continued on our course, you know, so yes, it can. Does it look likely right now? No. And I think the Harbinger, the book, and I think one of the reasons why it's resonated, it is to be a wake-up call, and it is a shaking, and if there is something scary, it's for the reason of, you know, the same way you described the Christmas Carol, that it can, and the ultimate, I mean, we can change, but does it look likely? It doesn't look likely with mainstream culture.
No, I agree with you. Jonathan, we're going to take this break. We're going to come back at the top of the hour, and we will take phone calls with you next with our very special guest, Jonathan Cahn, the Harbinger, the ancient mystery that holds the secret of America's future. We'll be back.
Always on your phone.
I'm just going to go right to the next segment. I'm going to have to cut it off, though, just a couple minutes in, because time's running out. Here we go.
I thought, this is my time to die. Dudes for paychecks, not food stamps.
It's right here, though, right? There we go. Just got to feel it.
Jonathan, because you're an expert in ancient mysteries, do these omens somehow mirror the book of Revelation?
Well, good question, because they seemed, what it seems is that in the book of Revelation, actually with general biblical prophecy, you don't see America as a you know, major power, and that you know, opens up this door that America is not a leading power in end time prophecy. So what the Harbinger is filling in the gap really between this and that. It's kind of like the missing key of how does that happen that America is not in that picture. So it's really, it goes right to it, but it's kind of like the piece before it.
Well, and what's kind of frightening about all this is, you know, the two of them somehow echo each other, even though they may be in stages, but the result is the same, apparently, and that is a disaster for us.
Yeah, and a lot of students of really end time biblical prophecy have said this for a long time, that it has to be somehow, but they couldn't see how, but somehow America cannot be what it is today. It just cannot be. It's a world, end time prophecy is a world that America is not playing a major role, and we have to, and we're beginning to see the signs of it, and even, you know, there's more and more voices, the end of the American era, and what happened, you know, with 9/11 and then the economic collapse sped it up with more and more talk about this, so we're actually beginning to see it happen.
What if there was a leader who understood Revelation, understood prophecy, understood these omens, and simply channeled whatever direction we've gone in that way on purpose? Now, I know you say that, you know, they've happened
people who write the speeches,
and nobody
obviously
planned it, but what if somebody did?
Well, if they were trying, you know, what I would say is that if they were trying to do it, I mean, you know, it would be, I mean, it would be a fascinating thing. I would say that's always possible. With the Harbingers, the thing is that for the people, for instance, like the majority leader to say what he said. I mean, if he realized what he was doing,
he was reading something somebody printed for him.
His career would have ended a lot sooner. And the same with John Edwards. And it's interesting that you say this because there's one of the mysteries is the 3 witnesses, and the third witness is Barack Obama. And when he comes as president, and he's dealing now with the economic collapse, and he comes to Capitol Hill to say, hey, it's okay, it's all. And in the center of his speech, he says, there's one thing I want every American to know, and then he says the central declaration of the ancient vow. He says, we will rebuild. We will rebuild. He actually says the exact words that Tom Daschle said on 9/11 from the vow. And if you were that night, if you were on the internet and you plugged in, you just wrote, we will rebuild, it would actually take you on the first page to the ancient vow of Israel. But after Obama said it, his words start replacing the ancient vow on the internet. It actually moves it up. Even to this day, if you type it. So, and all over the world, the headlines are saying Obama vows we will rebuild all over the world. And did he realize? I don't believe he did. Now, what you said is conceivable. Of course,
he doesn't even know he said it. He read it off a page.
Bunch of stuff with that. So it is conceivable, I think. But in this case, these things are just kind of out of control. I mean, the beam hitting the tree, the stock market at the exact moment. And by the way, George, this boggles me because nobody noticed that the 2 greatest crashes were happening on this exact day, and it did.
Yeah, that is bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, to the phones we go. Let's pick it up by going to Patrick in the state of Washington, west of the Rockies. Patrick, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you with us.
I would like to ask Jonathan, does his book or anything he's, come in contact with talk about, Islam and this great Mecca, this great city called Mecca, where they walk around in a circle around a black meteorite encased in marble? Is that part of this harbinger?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of things to that, and I think that'll be another book, but there's a lot of things to that as far as Islam and the place in prophecy. There is something in the harbinger, for instance, we didn't mention one of the things, that the actual people who actually were leading this attack on ancient Israel, the people involved were the ancient Assyrians, and they were kind of like the Nazis of the ancient world, and they're the ones who made this strike, and actually they are the fathers, and you can see this in the history book, they're the fathers of terrorism. They invented it. They perfected it. And so what it means is one of the harbingers is linked to the terrorists, that this thing has to be accomplished, and 9/11 has to be accomplished by people who are known as terrorists. They have to be somehow linked, and the people of, the ancient Assyrians were, of course, in the Middle East. The terrorists of 9/11, Middle East. The ancient Assyrians, when they carried out their attack, they did it through the language of Akkadian, which is extinct. But there's one language today that is the remaining or the sister language of Akkadian, and that's Arabic. And that is the same language that the terrorists of 9/11 accomplished the attack. So there's a whole bunch of stuff with it, but it does, and interesting, and it all goes back to the Middle East.
What does your gut tell you, Jonathan, about all of this? What do you think?
Food and water.
As far as where it's going?
Yes.
Security.
Yeah, well, my gut is that America, as it is going, is not turning, and I just like you said before, I don't see it. I mean, I don't see America turning as its mainstream culture is going in such a direction, and it's been very consistent. However, within America, I think one of the things is that and the individuals are listening. It's the individual. People can turn. There can be spiritual revivals in the midst of it, even if the mainstream culture is going the other way. And the other thing is that sometimes people have said to me, well, what's going to be? Is it going to be judgment or revival? And the answer is it can be both. And in the midst of a nation, there can be a people who are turning.
Yep, that could be too. Let's go East Point, Michigan. Mickey's with us, first-time caller.
Good morning.
I'd like to remind you, I am an American, but the mainstream media in America is not me. That is for sure.